Good morning, everybody. We are here this morning to do a review on this car, particularly the brakes that we use on the front and the back of the car. I installed these a year ago, so we're doing a 1-year follow-up. The brakes that we use were the Max brakes, geomet coated rotors with the carbon ceramic pads. I've put, I don't know, probably somewhere 12 to 15,000 miles probably on this car, a lot of which was just recently in one epic trip. I live in Michigan. My daughters and I drove from here across the Rocky Mountains, the Great Continental Divide, past Devil's Tower, through all kinds of stuff, out to San Francisco, spent a few days there, and then came back a little bit more southerly route through Las Vegas, up through like Moab, Utah, near Denver, and again in the mountainous areas. And we'll go over how it's performed on the Michigan flatlands and when we got into the mountains. Let's first, though, get this thing up into the air, take that tire off, and check to see what the rotors and the pads look like after all of that. The journey that we went on, but by the way, was something like 5,700 miles, just shy of 5,700 miles. So it was a lot of miles. Like 1/10 of all the miles on this car were done in that one trip. So let's get this thing up in the air and take a look at the rotors and the pads and see what they look like. All right, here we go. Initial looks pretty good. You can see some marks there, but as you rub your fingers across it, you don't really feel anything. If I look across it, it's not bad at all. Tiniest amount of pitting, which is absolutely normal usually. Nice feel to them. Front and back, I can feel the backs pretty much the same. And if I look at the pads are still huge and meaty. I might get nice enough to take those rotors off there. I mean, these calipers off to take a better look. Let's see. The coating in this area, that geomet coating on any of the surfaces that the brakes don't hit, like up in here, down in the fins, that all still looks beautiful. Notice even as I'm rubbing my fingers across it, I don't get very much brake dust at all. Pretty light. These things do not produce a lot of brake dust. There's not a lot of brake dust on the calipers. There is some. There's going to be some. I've put 10, 12,000 miles easily on this, maybe more. But all in all the surfaces look great, and the geomet coating is still there. So in Michigan road salt, that's a big deal. That's exactly why I got these. Now, performance-wise, what do I think about the performance on them? Well, the performance actually is one of the reasons that I'm kind of on the fence with these things. If you're doing day-to-day driving in town, they're fine. They're nice and smooth. When you come up to a light, instead of being completely silent, these can, if you're just inching along, that slow couple of inches creep up for whatever reason you might have to, these do have a tendency to kind of make a creaking sound, not a squeak, not a high pitch, but that creaking sound. So you've got to be aware of that. I don't think it's the rotors that are causing that so much as the pads. Your day-to-day driving, it is a buttery smooth feel. It's really nice. When we were in the mountains, they really shined. If you're in a mountainous area, these are great brakes to have. You could see how very little wear those pads had. And I might take those pads, the calipers off to take a closer look at those here. I think I might. I'm curious myself. But huge meaty pads still left even after 10, 12,000 miles minimum. And half of that going through mountainous terrain. These things do not fade on those mountainous roads. They are beautiful on those mountainous roads, which is one of the reasons these carbon ceramic brakes are, one of the ways that these carbon ceramic brakes shine is they resist fade and they resist wear. No matter how many times I had to hit the brakes going downhill, no matter how much we were on the brakes to keep our speed down to reasonable amounts, the brakes never had a bit of issue. They never faded, they never faltered. And that's a lot of that is down to the pads, and a good quality rotor too, but the pads. Now, where that does cause, it's not an issue, it's just something to be aware of. If I am going along on the highway and I have to hit the brakes really hard to slow down from speed really hard, with your typical, like a Pro Stop or a centric brake in ceramic pads, when you hit those brakes hard, you're going to stop really hard, and you don't have to hit super hard to brake really hard. With these, you do have to hit that pedal a bit harder than you normally would to get the hard stop. It's not unnerving or anything. I've had others drive my car. One of the girls on our trip, one of my daughters, drove 8 hours. She drove in Chicago traffic and everything, which I was really proud of. We had to make a couple of, if you're in Chicago, you're going to have to make a couple of those hard stops, and she had zero issues at all with doing that. But again, even to her, it was noticeable, and once I understood what the pads were designed for, she understood it. But it's something that you have to be aware of and get used to, because when you first feel it, you're like, oh, is that normal or not? I don't know. But if you want super long wearing pads and you don't have to worry about stuff like that, or you don't, you're okay with it, then these are great pads. If not, maybe get the rotors and just standard ceramic pads or semi-metallics or something like that. When you get into the semi-metallics and metallics, that's where you get a lot of brake dust though, and I hate brake dust. And these are probably the lowest brake dust pads I've ever had. So I'm willing to put up with them, although if I ever have to replace those pads, I'm probably just going to get standard ceramics. So now that I've babbled on a little bit about that to make you aware of it, let's take these calipers off and see what they look like. Okay, worst part of that job is I almost forgot to take this off. Forgot how it came out. Okay, so this pad right here, as I take a look at it, pretty good shape. It's really smooth too, and I think that's part of the reason. Let's take this one off to see if it's matched. Yeah, this one's the same way. Get it out here in the light so that we can see it. There's some pitting in there, which the way this is made, that's not uncommon. Notice, still, even rubbing my hands all over them, not a whole lot of dust like you would think. Very smooth. Chamfer, still huge. Look how much meat is on those. I've got 40, 50,000 miles left on these, easy. Very smooth surface, and that's why I believe, I'm positive actually, that you have to push on these a little bit further. Normally on brake pads, as you would move your finger across it, you would feel, because of the substrate that was used, you would feel that grabbing action. And even when I run my, I mean, if you were to do this with your fingernail, it would file your fingernail down. This isn't like that. It's such a hard substance that as I rub my fingernail across it, you hardly get anything. But you do hear that sound, that squeaking. That's what's causing that creaking when you slow down right there. The way these pads are made. There we go. Use 3 fingernails. That's causing that creaking or squeaking sound that you hear when you slow down. Still, very impressed with these pads. These things to be, I mean, for the conditions that I've put them in, I mean, it's amazing how good that these things really are. So, you know, for that kind of purpose, if I'm doing spirited driving, track driving, something like that, mountainous driving, and don't want them to fade, having to push that pedal a little harder is well worth it. And if you really need to, you can get upgraded versions of the rotors or the calipers themselves that use totally different pads, like an Akabono or something like that, that has a different mount. You'd have to get a whole kit, but it's a different mount, bracket, different caliper, and different pads that are larger in size. But we're just talking about the ones we got here. So anyway, this video is probably getting pretty long for just a simple review, but I wanted to give you guys a good idea of what you're going to have from a service perspective and from a usage perspective on these rotors and pads from Max Brakes. So far, this is the 3rd set of Max Brakes products I've used. Very impressed with them. Not a slightest bit of a lip on these rotors too. So super low wear pads, super low rotors. Gonna have a long life. So well worth it, I think. Let's put these things back on, and I think we are done. So as I put these things back together, I hope that was useful in some way for you guys. So if you're thinking about buying these, or if you're, you know, in the market for some new brakes or something like that, you have an idea of what to expect. So let me finish getting these put together. Talk to you guys later. Quick note, guys. I got the ones that I ordered for this car a bit mixed up. Sorry about that. I have a 2009. I got the Geomet coated rotors on the 2009. This one had the Elite OE black coating on them. Does the same job. It prevents rust and deterioration of anything that is not braking surface, so that the road salts and things in areas like mine don't destroy the rotors, and protect it as long as possible to keep it from corrosion. Sorry, I got the coating style mixed up. These are the black OE Elite Series rotors, not the Geomet. Sorry about that.